Hey everybody, this is Jacob Stoops, and we are back with episode number 66 of the Page 2 podcast. If you don't know me, I am an SEO director at Search Discovery, a data transformation company, and I am joined by Mr. Jeff Luella, Senior Technical SEO at the Wirecutter, a division of the New York Times.
Hey, howdy,
Hey,
hey.
howdy, hey. There it is.
You forgot Guru Tard and, podcaster since I can't SEO. That's,
Yes,
things
yeah.
that we've already been told we are. So
We don't take YouTube comments or subtweets very personal, do we?
no.
Well, the Guru Tard was definitely towards us. And for those of you that are wondering why we're talking about Guru Tards, maybe 9 episodes ago, there was a very rude YouTube comment because we just launched a YouTube channel this season. Very rude comment that we ended up deleting because it was just completely uncalled for, in which we were called Guru Tards and told to go look it up on Urban Dictionary. So I looked it up, and they were right. It was very unflattering and unpleasant. Then we just kind of moved on with our
Some
day.
of us moved on.
Jeff hasn't moved on. Anyways, yeah. How's it going?
It's going great. I mean, it's been like a crazy week. Started off more crazy. We finally finished up our planning for what we're going to be doing in 2021. So it was a lot more detailed than I've ever really been through, but it's made it all the way through the top chains of command. So we're set. So we're ready. I'm getting excited. Like next week, we're jumping into like all our growth movements that we'll be doing at Wirecutter.
What exactly is growth movements? Is that like?
Well, not growth. I'm on the reader growth. We're here to grow my number of readers that come to our site. More people that are coming to, unique people that are great, like new people, even better. But also making sure that the people who've come and find us easily. Typical SEO stuff. We're broken into kind of 2 teams in a way. I have the editorial side of SEO and I'm on the technical side. So I'm just making sure that we don't mess up and that we're here and we're ready for Core Web Vitals and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what comes out of Core Web Vitals, because quite honestly, every client that I'm working with seems to suck at it.
Yeah, no. And
so maybe if we all just suck enough, there's not going to be a change because we all suck.
Yeah, the issue in the publishing world is that AMP is like super important and we all hate it. Nobody wants to be on AMP. So, well, maybe some people want to be on AMP, but not most people. So it's one of those things where we're just like, not this year, but maybe next year. They say if we hit our Core Web Vitals, we can pull that AMP Band-Aid off and actually have a really fast running website. But in the publishing world, if you're not in those top stories and you're not getting into some of those listings, like no one's going, we're called the Page 2 podcast, but no one's going to Page 2 for news. So, we need to be as high as we can up on the page. And a lot of that is that top stories carousel. And then that's where we really want to focus on and make sure that we're meeting our goals there. We do have AMP, which is great. So we can like ride that out until we get all our Core Web Vitals, but we're not too far off.
Fun, before we bring on our guest, fun fact, if you see the pictures behind me, it is Godfather 1, Godfather 2, Casino, and Goodfellas. And the story behind the Page 2 podcast, when I originally came up with it, is I wanted to integrate some sort of like a mob movie theme, because I'm a mob movie aficionado. And the best place to hide dead bodies is on Page 2 podcast. So there you go. And then nice. I found out there's like the Page 1 podcast, the Page 3 podcast. There's another Page 2 podcast. So it was a completely terrible idea. Now that we're competing with all of the
just got to own it and win it.
Right. Exactly. All right. So let's bring on our guest. And I think Mr. Luella is about to have a little cat fight. But our guest today is Mr. Geoff Atkinson, founder and CEO of Huckabuy. How's it going, Jeff?
Hey guys, it's going great. Thanks for having me on, Jacob, Jeff. It's great to be here. Love this podcast, so I'm glad I can be part of it now.
great.
Yeah, and as long as I say Geoff, I'll never mess up. But you guys aren't going to know who I'm talking to. So good luck with
we'll
that.
both talk.
I'm just glad I'm not defaulting to Geoff. That's sometimes the go-to. So.
Yes, we were arguing about which is the right way to spell Geoff before we jumped on.
I'll let Geoff pass as Geoff. No Geoffs said.
I appreciate that.
We're part of the same family.
Yes.
Just cousins.
Yes. The Geoff
family.
All right. So before we jump into Geoff's background, not Mr. Luella, Mr. Atkinson, who wants to be Geoff 1 and Geoff 2 before I confuse myself?
You can call him Geoff.
All right.
Yeah. Call me
call
the other
Luella.
Dude. Yeah.
Want to touch on a couple of things. So number one, we've got a YouTube channel. We just launched it this season. We would love for people to also listen to us on YouTube. So like the kids say, if you like our videos, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications. We would love to build up our following on YouTube. It's just another way to listen, and in that case, watch. And then probably the other thing, way more important than our YouTube subscribers, is Hamlet Batista and his GoFundMe. The good news is it is up to $62,694 as of my last look, but the goal is 100,000. His, this is his family's time of need. Obviously, it was a huge tragedy and a loss to the industry. So if you have the means to do so, please go to GoFundMe and donate to his campaign if you haven't already done so. Hamlet he brought so much to the industry, and he gave so much of himself. He made so many good friends, and even acquaintances like us really have felt the impact of his passing. So that would be GoFundMe.com/F/in-memory-of-Hamlet-Batista. And of course, thank you to Lily Ray for organizing. Probably the other thing in terms of things that you can do to support not just him and his family, but to support the amazing people that work for his company, RankSense. So there have been a couple of public demos recently. A lot of attendance. It has been recorded. I've had the pleasure of doing a demo of RankSense in December, which was the last time I was able to speak to Hamlet. His the company that he's building, definitely it's quite amazing, and it's quite revolutionary. And I would love to get some search discovery clients to utilize this platform, because it solves a very important problem, which on the agency side, that problem is implementation. And Hamlet's company, software, platform, whatever you want to call it, works through Cloudflare, and it acts as a meta CMS, number one, and it helps you implement some changes out on the cloud. It's part testing platform. I know that they're also looking at ways to utilize technology like Python, which Hamlet is known for, and machine learning to automate content writing, meta description writing. It was really, really powerful stuff. And I would just encourage everybody that if implementation or if automation is a problem that you're trying to solve with your company, your agency, if you do SEO, go give his company a look. It's ranksense.com. Last thing, and then we will get into the episode, is of course there also is another project that is near and dear to our heart, another organization, and that is United Search. So for people that are looking to get into the speaking circuit, this part is for you. So are you looking to break into SEO conference speaking, but not sure how? Are you feeling that you are not well represented within the current SEO speaking circuit? You want to change that? We at the Page 2 podcast would like to take the opportunity to let users know about United Search, a new organization and first of its kind SEO speaker accelerator dedicated to ending the implicit bias in SEO that keeps BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, and women in the margins of our industry. Their credo is diverse SEO equals better SEO. United Search offers mentoring advice from people with real-world practical SEO experiences in order to give students the skills they need to be able to deliver an amazing presentation on any stage in the network they need to land gigs, all at no cost to the student. So how does this work? It's actually pretty simple. United Search connects a cohort of the best pitches they can source with the top mentors in their subject matter. After working with their mentors to develop their talk, they will host a live stream event where students get to present to SEO experts and receive positive, constructive feedback. Graduates of this SEO Speaker Accelerator will get the benefit of top-notch mentorship, public speaking training, a video reel, lots of positive feedback, as well as a foot in the door to help and find and land speaking gigs, and access to an amazing community of SEO professionals. What does this mean for our podcast? As a sponsor and advocate, we're committed to regularly showing stats that illustrate our commitment to diversity on this podcast, and we've made a pledge to diversify, meaning that 60% of our guests will come from underrepresented groups, including women, BIPOC, BAME, LGBTQIA+, as well as representation for people with disabilities and those who are 55 years and older. If this sounds of interest to you, visit unitedsearch.org to learn more about becoming a student or mentor, or visit them on Twitter at search_united. So definitely something we talk about nearly every episode, diversity and balance. It's not always been great in the SEO industry, and we're trying to do our little part to change that and bring different perspectives to our podcast, and certainly United Search is leading the charge on that. So definitely something that we want to continue to promote. We think it's important. Okay. All right. So let's talk some SEO. So Geoff, you are now on the hot seat. Tell everybody about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm originally from the Boston area. I grew up on the South Shore of Boston, kind of between Boston and Cape Cod. I was a ski racer of all things, and ended up going to school to Dartmouth College in New Hampshire. I spent a year on the US ski team, and then took a year off, lived out west in Sun Valley, Idaho. And I really just, being a skier and getting to travel the United States, specifically, ski towns out west, I fell in love with the mountains, and eventually after college moved to Utah. So kind of a wild story of how I ended up at Overstock and in Utah. I've been here for 15 years now, which is crazy. But I was actually moving to New Zealand to work at a friend's bar in Queenstown, New Zealand, and just be a ski bum. That was my plan. My mom was like, you're not going to leave here without taking a job interview. So she actually knew someone, and Dartmouth has like a career services type department, and they schemed on what job interview to take. And that ended up being this fastly growing e-commerce company out of Salt Lake City called Overstock. So I took a job there at the ground floor, really trying just to be a ski bum more than have a real career. But spent 7 years at Overstock, eventually became their SVP over marketing and analytics, and did a lot of sort of the front end revenue stuff at Overstock. Then, I'm sure we'll get into that on this podcast, which is cool. There's a lot of great war stories and success stories from that experience. Then moved on, took some time off, ended up helping a friend who had just become the CEO of this luxury travel startup named Portico Club. That got acquired after I was there for about 6 months, and really wanted to get back to Park City, where I live. So moved back to Park City and founded Huckabuy. And Huckabuy actually started as a terrible idea. It was a B2C idea. Think comparison shopping engine that shows coupons. So one single source to see prices and coupons on one spot. It was a total SEO play. But at the time, you guys will remember Google, and still does, sort of shut down affiliate sites from ranking. You had to have the product in-house. So I think our largest revenue month ever was like $20 affiliate check. So we were just swimming upstream. Fortunately, though, people that knew Huckabuy recognized some of the SEO technology and automation that we had built and wanted to start licensing that. And so about 3.5 years ago, we pivoted into a software company completely unwillingly, didn't even know about the power of recurring revenue or, all the great things that, VCs sometimes only invest in SaaS and this and that. I just did it as the fastest path to revenue. And now think of us as a technical SEO layer. We kind of do three things. We automate structured data. We automate a dynamically rendered version of your site in a flat HTML version. And now we have actually a page speed product specifically designed for the 2021 update here coming in May. So that's the latest. Things are good. I'm here in Park City. It's snowing. I have a wife and 2 dogs and a baby. You guys let me know what you want to know. It's great to be on.
Yeah. So you're an Ivy Leaguer. So I'm not gonna lie. Geoff and I said we've got to, at minimum, pretend. This is where the imposter syndrome comes into play this episode. But at minimum, pretend to be very smart. And we were like, that's never gonna work. So I guess tell us how. And I see what your mom was saying, by the way. You went to Dartmouth, and then you came out of that and wanted to be a ski bum. So like those two things don't necessarily work together. So I'll just say, like, from the outside looking in, I think you've got a good mom. She got you back on the right track. But tell us a little bit about your Dartmouth experience.
I definitely do have a good mom. So just so you know, I definitely didn't get into Dartmouth on academics. I was a 2-sport athlete. So I was a ski racer and a runner. And I only ran my freshman year and then I got injured, but I was like a 2-for-1. So they could get two positions checked with one person. Dartmouth is kind of wild. It's up in the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire. It's a big like fraternity scene. So I was a fraternity boy, which is kind of a wild thing, but my life was really skiing. When you ski at that level, Dartmouth is one of the best ski schools in the country, and it takes like all of your time. So a lot of travel, a lot of up in 5 in the morning, 2-a-day practices. That was really my experience. I kind of regret not pursuing the academic side of Dartmouth more. I learned a lot. I think, what I say about going to a school like that is you learn a lot being just around smart people. So it's not so much the classes and what you're learning in the classroom. You're just around people that are way smarter than you are, and that sort of rubs off. So it was a great experience. It took me 5 years to graduate, so that'll give you an idea of my academic acumen. But it was a great experience. It's one that, it's just a cool alumni network. I think it's sort of one of the more like they joke, you always know you've met someone from Yale in like the first 2 minutes of the conversation. I think Dartmouth's probably like the most humble of the Ivy League. I think everyone's sort of pretty down to earth and well-natured, and because it's in the middle of nowhere and you end up doing a lot of stuff outside. So I'm proud to be an alumni, and it was a great experience, but I definitely don't think of myself as any sort of intellectual academic or anything like that.
Oh my gosh. I was thinking of, I was expecting Andy Bernard from the Office, like a Cornell, like maybe like a,
Ever heard of it?
Yeah, ever heard of it? An a cappella band, a story or something of that nature. So to hear that folks from Dartmouth are humble is just not. I don't even know what I was expecting other than my fictitious version of Andy Bernard.
Yeah, I think they're a little more down to earth. Usually you hear about, Harvard grads or Cornell, or they put it right at the front of everything they do, and that's not who we are. So
living down here in Georgia, being like in all the SEC schools down here, like it is a huge badge to honor of where you went to, and there's wars every Saturday with like flags out on people's lawns between Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, and it's fun coming from Philadelphia, where like our closest major college team that had any good football was Penn State, but coming down here to where it's like college football beats pro football every day of the week. So that's been interesting where people, that's how they introduce themselves. Hey, Georgia, where'd you go? And I'm like, community college in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Woo!
Yeah. So it's funny.
I will say
I
that
mean,
was something I missed in the college experience. Like
Yeah.
these SEC schools, the football is such a big part of the experience. And Dartmouth had a football team, but they were terrible and no one went to the games.
Yeah.
And so I've only been to one big college football game in Oregon, at University of Oregon. And I don't think it was anything like what I could expect going to an SEC game. So I've missed out on that college experience.
Yeah, me too. But I've been there actually as an adult, like last year, and it was a fun time. I mean, just the party atmosphere around it was a great time, and I was like, man, if I went to college here, I'd be in trouble.
So I have that experience. So I went to the Ohio State University, which it's very, very similar. So like people coming from Michigan, like once they introduce themselves from Michigan, most Ohio State fans will think, all right, you're an asshole, because of the whole now it hasn't been a rivalry, for a long time at this point because of the results on the field with Ohio State kind of dominating, but it used to be a really important rivalry at some point. And I know the folks on the Ohio State side still kind of consider it a rival, and it's a kind of a badge of honor to hate Michigan University, so on and so forth. But I will say the college experience, while awesome, definitely contributed to the fact that, and Geoff, like you said, I graduated in 5 years. I went to Ohio State for like 5 years, never graduated, left college and had to go back to a different college later to finish it up. And I attribute that partly to the football related party atmosphere, which I indulged a little bit too much, but it got me to where I'm at here. which is running a humble little podcast. And
Yes.
I would not, if I had not done that, I would not be an SEO. Like that part is a fact.
True.
That part
That's
is
where all the derelicts go.
Right, exactly.
SEO.
So Geoff, when you started at Overstock, you started as an email marketing manager, right? Very ground floor. And then you became the over the course of several years, the SVP of all digital. So how does one go from a very entry level position to SVP of digital at a company like Overstock, which now that was a little while ago. So Overstock then probably wasn't what it is today. But that's still a pretty amazing jump in terms of leveling up, roles, titles, what you're doing with the company. Talk us through a little bit about what that was like, how that went, your experience.
Yeah, even to say I started as the email marketing manager isn't true. I was the lowest man on the totem pole in the whole marketing org. I think my primary responsibility was breaking down the cardboard boxes and taking them out to the recycling bin when I got there. Couple things, people ask me about this experience a lot and what to learn from it. I think one is being part of an organization that's on the up and up. Being part of a rocket ship is a huge part of an early career. Also being part of a larger company that has career advancement opportunities and career paths and training and mentoring. And then just the value of having a powerful mentor is a big part of it as well. So the story sort of goes, I started on the bottom rung on the email team. If you've ever shopped at Overstock, you've probably seen a lot of emails. We sent a lot of email, a lot of coupons, a lot of warehouse clearances and such. We kind of figured it out pretty early though, and the email was just growing like crazy. And it wasn't any sort of really sophisticated stuff. It was just all in a spreadsheet, and we'd test different subject lines and coupons. And it was really sort of, this was 2005 when the internet was still kind of a wild west where you could try almost anything, and there was no books written. You were trying to figure it out as you went. And I was a sociology major, so I was coming into this world really fresh, but it turns out I had a bit of a mind for digital marketing, and we put up some great results. And Overstock was really a meritocracy, meaning everybody watched the performance of each team. So whether it was affiliate marketing or paid search or SEO or email or website conversion rate, you know, up to the hour, you could see exactly what was going on. And so email was a rocket ship, and I eventually became the manager of that team. At the time, we'd made some like really major tech investments into Oracle and Teradata. And once they made like these $40 million investments, they were like, well, we got to make money from these things, specifically the Teradata, which is a data warehousing system, not as popular today, but then it was sort of revolutionary. So they kind of handed me the keys to this thing and said, hey, we need to make money off this, right? We're tracking all this customer information, clicks and searches and what they're buying and stuff. And so we got into the personalization world, which was the first thing after, first company really to do it after Amazon. I also joke, you don't want to pick Amazon as your number one competitor for 7 years of your career, but it makes you stronger, that's for sure. So got into personalization, then we started applying a lot of this stuff to the website. So I think I became like director of website marketing or something like that. And learned about SEO really in a random way. We had an SVP, I wasn't an SVP at this point, who had heard about this guy who does search engine optimization. His name is Paul Bremer. He was big in the industry back then, sort of has tapped out since then, but I gave him a call and talked for 2 hours, and I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I remember at this point, I'd formed a bit of a relationship with the CEO and founder of Overstock, Patrick Byrne. And I ran up to his office and I hopped on the whiteboard and I was just like, you got to see what this guy was telling me. I don't know if it's true or not, but this is like the concept. And none of us had heard of it. No one had heard of SEO. It was a new phrase. And we had a lot of resources, and Patrick got the vision enough, and I had the vision sort of in my head of how we wanted to go about this, that we had almost like, not at first, but at some point we kind of had unlimited resources. So we brought Paul in. He was with an agency, he became a consultant for us, almost like a teacher. You know, he would come in and would have SEO class for 10 marketing employees at a time. And we did that for like 3 months. So we got like a lot of knowledge transfer, and it kind of went nuts. You know, we went from like 0 to 300 million or something like that in like 3 or 4 years. It was a really crazy growth curve. Now we had almost unlimited resources, which is a crazy thing. Like we had 40 people working on SEO at some point, with half of them being developers. So those are just circumstances that are not normal. But my Overstock story, that was just part of it. You know, eventually did become the SVP over marketing. So I controlled, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising spend. We did a lot of TV successfully. You know, the game plan there was really TV and SEO were the new customer acquisition channels. And then we got really good at CRM. You know, we had a loyalty program, really strong on analytics, a lot of statisticians. Eventually, I didn't just dabble in marketing. I also ran this analytics group that started to do all the pricing algorithms and forecasting algorithms, which is a really cool, wild world. Eventually even ran buying. So I've had experience from, you know, doing hardcore SEO to being on the garment district of New York buying raincoats. Just a really kind of diverse experience that I got there that I'm very fortunate for. I think my rise was putting up numbers early, and then Patrick was my mentor. You know, he took me under his wing, and I did great things for him, and he did great things for me. And we were a great team for 7 years. Yeah, it was a rocket ship. You know, it's a big part of it, is just being at the right place at the right time. And I worked, you know, extremely hard, obviously, to get to that position. But yeah, it was a great run. It was a great run, and I'm very grateful for that experience. I've really only had 2 jobs in my life. The Portico thing was like 6 months. So Overstock and now Huckabuy, which I feel really grateful for.
Yeah, I was going to quickly ask one question about Portico. So for myself, spent most of my time in agencies. My couple of in-house roles, one was in automotive, which is about everything you would ever imagine about automotive. And it was like, I very quickly realized I was not a fit in that world. I was in and out for about a year. And then one was for a company called Startups, startups.com now, which was a really, really interesting experience that was more focused on providing business advice for people founding startups so that they can eventually become profitable, make money. And I ran all of the organic search and a lot of the digital marketing for startups. That for me also, like in-house, something about in-house just doesn't seem to jive with me. So I went back to agency. But one of the big things in-house was, or not in-house, but at startups, was the experience of being bought out. And that's like in the case of most startups, that's the goal, is to build your company up enough to achieve a certain level of viability to either go public or have somebody buy you, or both. And as somebody that, even if it was just a short amount of time, what was it like to go through kind of a buyout like that?
Well, I think one thing that I've realized, especially now with my own startup and being involved as an entrepreneur now since 2012, is there's different levels of acquisitions. So you hear about the great ones, the big ones, where everybody 100x their money, and but not all acquisitions are all that profitable for the founding group or even the executives. So in the I don't think, the company's done, so I'm not disclosing too much here. I was brought on as like basically the number 2 at Portico Club, and it was a real bad situation. We had raised $10 million and we were blowing through it at a rate that is like, I don't know, 250 grand a month. I mean, it was more than that, probably $500,000 a month. The company was not particularly being run very well. It also didn't really have the normal founder interaction, in that a competitor, it was owned by this company called Exclusive Resorts. So it's like subscription vacations, like the most ridiculous vacations you could imagine. And they charged like $500,000 to become a member. Those founders sold and made a bunch of money. They sold to Steve Case, the founder of AOL and his Revolution Fund. They made a bunch of money. Then they started like their 6-minute abs, which was a company called Inspirato. That was the same concept for about $20,000. And so Steve Case said, well, screw these guys. I'm going to start Portico Club, which will be $10,000. And so it wasn't your normal. And then he brought in, my friend Justin to be the CEO. And it wasn't your normal sort of startup situation. It was a lot of like, Steve Case was pretty involved, interesting guy, by the way, but he just pumped a bunch of money into it and was like, we gotta solve for this competition. I've never had such a high position at a company with like zero control over what was going on. It was kind of shocking. I was like, why are you paying me to be here? It was a really, so that when they say acquisition, it was really kind of a merger more than anything. Yeah. They touted it as an acquisition, but Inspirato bought Portico Club, and then they basically did like a stock swap. But because I wasn't like a founder, it didn't financially impact me in any big way. It was stressful, and but no one walked away with a bunch of money like a normal, or maybe not normal, but a good acquisition. So it wasn't like that huge rah. I'm hoping that does happen to Huckabuy. I think Huckabuy's worth a lot more than Portico Club ever was, but it wasn't that whole like adrenaline, like we did it type mentality. It was more like, whew, like we got out of this bad situation and it's over with.
Yeah. The interesting thing I think that's some really good levity to my initial question, because my initial question made it seem as if all acquisitions, people are 10xing or even more in some cases their money. And that is incredibly, incredibly rare. And that was the advice of kind of the business owners at startups who had been through that process. Will Schroeder, Ryan Rutan, you may or may not know them, really, really savvy business professionals who have been through several acquisitions, founded multiple companies, and just really understand it. And their advice is those types of unicorn acquisitions are just that. They're unicorns, right? They almost never happen. So coming out of an acquisition and making any money, a lot of times is a good outcome, especially when you consider that 90% of startups fail after 6 months or something like that. So Yeah, so I guess my next question before we get into a really interesting topic, which isn't just e-commerce, it is enterprise and ridiculous scale enterprise e-commerce, would be about Huckabuy, right? So you spent a lot of time in-house out of college. You went through this, seems like a really painful experience at Portico. So founding a company is a completely different thing, and it requires, I think, a completely different mindset, skill set. What made you want to found your own company, and how did you evolve from a coupon company to an SEO company?
Yeah. I don't think that you ever know the skill set that's involved in founding a company. I always wanted to do this. I remember I went to, it wasn't a full MBA, but Dartmouth has a great business school called Tuck, and Dartmouth's a liberal arts college. They don't have these really specific, like you don't even have a business degree. So I knew I wanted to get into business. So they did this program called the Bridge program. That's like business camp. It's like 2 months of get an MBA in 2 months. Really stressful and a lot of work. But I remember meeting this guy, this professor. That was the best part of it. These professors were really great. And he was a finance guy that had made a bunch of money on Wall Street, and he had moved to New Hampshire with his family to work as a professor. And he said to me, Geoff, there's 2 ways to make a lot of money. One is you either are in, there's 2 ways, finance, or you start your own company. And something about that just stuck with me. You know, I was probably like 19 years old or something. And just it was this sort of dreamy thing, you know, which it's not, by the way, but it was this dreamy founder type idea. So I always had business ideas, and I fortunately, I knew what I didn't know. You know, I didn't come out of college and say, I know how to do this, I'm just going to do it. I really did sort of was strategic about my Overstock experience to be like, this is the stepping stone for me. And I was I was right hip to hip with a very successful founder. You know, his dad was the CEO of Geico. His godfather was Warren Buffett. Here I was, like, right at this guy's hip, kind of learning what it takes to be the CEO and the founder. And that was great experience. You never know the skill set of having the whole company on your shoulders versus being a cog in the wheel, even if you're a very big cog in the wheel, is a big jump, and you're not prepared for it. But I do feel very fortunate about Huckabuy making it as far as it's made it. I think we solve a real problem, which is, and Geoff and Jacob, you both have dealt with how hard it is to check some of these really big technical boxes internally. Before the call, when we were talking about core web vitals, to hear that you guys are, you know, Geoff, you're prepping for it a ton, and Jacob, you're saying it's really hard, right, to get these things across the line. So I really believe in what we've built. I also think, you know, I do think a lot about the acquisition. It is a SaaS company that's firmly in the MarTech space. And so we do think a lot about acquisition and being unique enough and providing enough that an Adobe or a Salesforce or one of these marketing clouds would be like, we need an SEO solution that really moves the needle. So I'm proud of what we've built. We have a long ways to go before anything like that would happen, but to have it be, you know, there's a moment of being proud for it to be, you know, we're about 22 employees now. Everybody's paid well. They're great healthcare. You know, the company's growing. The early stages, the very early, we're still in an early stage, but the early stages are really tough when it's just sort of nothing. And so when we were a coupon site, that was the biggest thing, was like, you can have the most brilliant idea. To pivot into the SaaS company, it was just critical. We wouldn't be alive if I hadn't done that. And I think you have to be very open as a founder to think your brilliant idea maybe wasn't that brilliant. And yet there is this path, right? There's this pathway to success that you see. It might be there, and to take that and take it quickly. The very early stages, you have to be able to, I think, to be humble enough and nimble enough to make those moves. And even to this day, like, I can tell a story maybe later. We just pivoted our whole sales efforts. I got rid of pretty much our entire sales staff last Friday, a week ago. And SEOs don't like to buy from account executives. I've learned that the hard way over the last couple of years. they want to buy, they do 95% of their shopping digitally, right? It's a digital relationship. They're going to the site, they're researching dynamic rendering and trying to find solutions. They're researching the May 2021 update. And we're just facilitators. We're just the ones that we have to make it as easy as possible for these people to buy our product. So even that, a week ago, I made a major pivot in Huckabuy. And I think you got to be willing to do that. And so it's been cool. I feel fortunate. You know, Huckabuy, I think, is in a great position, and you know, happy to talk about it more. I know there's the Overstock story is a great one, but these technical SEO boxes are very hard to check, and a SaaS solution, in my mind, kind of lends itself to accomplishing some big technical SEO improvements, and so that's really what we've built.
So one more question, two more questions actually. I had one question in my mind, and you brought up another question before we jump into the e-commerce stuff. As a SaaS company, you're focusing on some really technical and really advanced things, right? Site speed, especially in the way that you're approaching it. It's a really challenging thing to move the needle on, and you quickly reach the point of diminishing return for the amount of effort that you have to put into it. You're doing edge SEO, cloud SEO, which is pretty advanced for what most people do. You know, if anybody reads your website, there's definitely a lot of talk with respect to rendering and how you can render content. So what made you want to fill that particular niche? What did you see? Like, why did you pivot to that?
You know, this is another one of those, like, there was never any brilliant aha moment. It's a number of things. So I'll tell you quickly the story. So the actual first piece of technology that people wanted to start licensing from us was something called Huck News, which we don't even sell anymore, and we barely support it. Think of, the idea was, how do you create a new fresh piece of content really quickly on pages that matter? And the idea was, well, you put it right above the footer. And our idea was to grab an Instagram post and then just write a short blurb about that Instagram post, and you could post it. And that's like a tiny little fresh piece of content that comes up, and you could do it in 5 minutes. And if you did it enough, Google would see, oh, they're updating this page and in a meaningful way, and you get rewarded. And it worked. It worked great, actually. It was amazing how well it worked. And so that was the first piece. We don't even sell that piece anymore. The next piece was structured data. I realized at Overstock how important structured data was, how much it was moving the needle, how this whole zero-click thing was playing out, how the whole voice search thing was playing out, how they were both dependent on rich results, and how they were both dependent on structured data, and that was really the future of how Google and other search engines wanted to talk to websites. And it's also, just like page speed, it's a hard task to often do well internally, because you have moving targets. You have the website changing all the time, and then you have Google changing their requirements all the time. So I figured, all right, if we could do it across 100 customers and we monitored it really closely, and we could adjust as Google changed and these websites changed, that would really be something of value. And it was amazing how quickly our growth took off. Like, the structured data piece at the time just resonated great. We went from like 0 to $1 million in sales really quickly. And then came dynamic rendering. And I have a CTO who watches Google like a hawk. And I was like, really? Like, that's a thing? We can do that? Like, that's I thought that was like one of the biggest pivots Google's made in a really long time, is allowing you to give them a different version. And so that opened up sort of the Huckabuy cloud, and we built that. We were a first dynamic rendering tool. We're still the best in terms of performance in dynamic rendering. And then a natural next step of that was page speed. Like, can we do this? Can we use a lot of this technology for users as well? Can we use a lot of this edge network technology to push the needle as well? And honestly, we were working on it before Google announced Core Web Vitals and the page experience update, which was just really fortuitous. And now, not only have we spent 8 months building a product for it, but we also have been doing the marketing for it. So if you Google 2021 Google update, we ranked #1. We did a bunch of our own SEO work. So we feel like we're really well positioned going into May. I think a lot of people are going to be scrambling. You guys are too smart to be doing that, but there's a lot of people are going to be searching for solutions, and I think Huckabuy is going to be right there, ready to be purchased. So
ready to meet the need.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit how it works. You don't have to give away the, all the details, but this is something I think you mentioned it was on the edge. So is this something that works with a VPN, or do you have like CDNs? So does it work with something like Cloudflare, or is it on, or, at New York Times we use Fastly, which does a lot of that end stuff too. Or is it your own kind of CDN mixture that you put out there on, AWS or something?
So our real proprietary technology is actually in the rendering.
Okay.
And then it's a partnership with Cloudflare, is the best performing Huckabuy page speed and dynamic rendering product. So it's at edge using workers. And then we also work with Lambda at edge. So AWS's solution, we also have a solution for as well. The Cloudflare one though has the most functionality. So if you do use our page speed product, you can get a 30 to 40 point improvement in your Lighthouse scores, maybe sometimes even more. But Huckabuy is a great example. If you just go around and click on our site, you get a sense of what's possible anyways.
Do you do any type of reporting on it at all? That's actually where we're at right now. We're working on just our core web vitals in general, but it's, where we're implementing Lighthouse CI into our, engineering CI stack. We ended up taking that out, and we went with Calibre, or Caliber. If it's officially Caliber, I always called it Calibre, and then I was told I was wrong. But Caliber. So now the idea was to get the engineers to constantly be looking at, not constantly, but at least have it pop up, and they're aware of the performance issues or benefits that they're getting. Because I want them to see, I want to gamify it, right? I want them to know, hey, we're going faster, and even if it's 2 points faster, it's like, hey, we went 2 points faster today.
And that's what it is.
Yeah,
those
but then
those little wins.
And that's what's awesome about doing that. But then it's like, I guess we're starting to implement RUM monitoring, so real user metrics, and they're nothing like Lighthouse scores. They're actually totally the opposite of Lighthouse scores, because where we thought we were doing worse in Lighthouse, it's like, it seems like once we started getting some of that RUM data in, it's like, oh, like our LCP is not so bad, but our CLS is terrible. But in the other ones, it says it's fine. So I've been having part of my 2021 so far was just coming up with reporting, and I want to report it all and let them know, hey, engineering, not as big of a score on LCP is if we're at 5 seconds, that actually might be really 2 seconds once you put in all our CDN and caching and stuff like that, which the RUM data will give us. But we're still trying to figure that data out before we just dive into some of the, there's some basic things we know we need to fix, but at the same time, reporting is tough. So I didn't know how Huckabuy did if reporting those core web vitals.
So we do, we have a dashboard where we are, and you're absolutely right. A really big part of this is how's the game being scored, right?
Yeah.
They've been pretty upfront and honest with it, but I think what we've found and what we're building sort of next. So our reporting on it comes obviously from a local, or it's in the cloud, but it's coming from a certain location. The best job you can do is actually call it 5 nodes around the world, which is a lot of work to do. That's sort of our next evolution, is actually being okay, here are your 3 core web vitals in Hong Kong, in London, in San Francisco, and in New York, or in Australia, something like that. Now, usually they level out if you're at edge, right? Because you're already delivering the content and the pages at edge at over 200 locations around the world. But you still find some issues. The reporting piece is tough. And Geoff, you and I could talk about this for days, what's going on with it. But it is really, if you focus on the 3 core web vitals, and one of the things that we did, we gamified it as well, is we had this goal of trying to get to 100. I didn't even know if that was possible. And we got Huckabuy to 100. Nice. And that was so cool. Now we're no longer there because we added a chat box to the site. But we're at 95 or something like that now.
Stupid chat boxes.
Which is great. But I heard a stat the other day that the average website on the internet right now scores a 35. And it's something you have to be pretty high to pass completely.
Yeah.
So
90.
90, yeah. So everyone's scrambling. You guys are doing it way ahead of most competitors. I loved we actually started on the dynamic rendering by building an AMP product that didn't work. They only use it for news sites, AMP. So anyways, that's cool. It's interesting hearing you, and I'd love to talk to you offline about what's that transition looks like from AMP to core web vitals. But I think it's just Google putting their foot down. They're done with a slow internet, and I don't blame them.
Agreed. I mean, they made the world secure. You know, they really have, you know, with everyone now is HTTPS. If you go to a site that's not HTTPS, you're like, get out of here.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, by them doing this is a bigger undertaking. I mean, AMP was pretty big when people had to jump onto that to get into things like top stories. So it's big. So I am feeling that their introduction to the algorithm is going to be minimal, just because I think there's so much in line with this. But just by announcing it and then slowly tweaking that wheel over time, I think you'll see people really focusing on page speed, which is great, because the last thing we want to do is wait 20 seconds for a page to load.
So let's move to the next section, and I'll just say, you left it wide open. Rum data. I don't know who picked that name. That's a great name, but I will say, like, the only rum data that I'm used to interpreting is my own alcohol intake. So
how many shots?
Right,
many
exactly.
Was it
exactly
4 or 5?
How many for me to end up on the floor? All right. So core topic of this episode is not just e-commerce and not just enterprise e-commerce, but ridiculous scale enterprise e-commerce, right? So Geoff, you want to take this part away?
Yeah, sure. So
Mr. Tech guy.
No, so and this is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I've worked in e-commerce for a while. I used to work for a company called Ecommerce, which was was a huge, it was a huge company that had tons of. We ran a ton of brands. It was crazy. Like we ran Toys R Us. Like we owned. I said it was kind of like we owned the building, right? That came to us.
Huge,
we had the
huge
platform.
partner of Overstock's. Was GSI. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and it was fun when we were there. I learned a ton about it. And one thing I learned about like large scale e-commerce is that small changes can have big effects. But I've also learned that when you have 1 million products, you are in a technical mess. So what are some of the important aspects that you're just working in large scale e-commerce that you're seeing, and like even with Huckabuy, right? Like kind of the tools that you could be putting in place to help fix some of those issues.
Yeah, I mean, Overstock got really sophisticated really quickly. Obviously, we were throwing a ton of resources at it, but to show you how sophisticated we got, Geoff, we actually had this mechanism that would create category pages based on keyword volume automatically. So say like all of a sudden there was a little uptick in people searching for white end tables, all of a sudden a category would be produced.
Wow.
Product would be flowing into it, reviews would be flowing into the bottom of it, and suppliers would be told we need inventory and white end tables. So it got very sophisticated very quickly. I think the reason for it is we had great architects between myself, Paul, and our IT architects. We kind of started from a blank slate because the site was so bad that we went from our first SEO push was we were integrating a new internal search engine. So when you search for stuff on Overstock, you would get results back, and we realized, well, we could use this to power all of our categories and refinements and everything. So we architected this thing to do a lot of that heavy lifting. And then we went to the product page, and then we went to there's only like 4 product or page types at Overstock. And so we literally got to build like the perfect SEO system that's still used today there. And so, we got to, and they had about 20 million, they have like 20 million products. And also to show you the sophistication of it, when I started at Overstock, they were like a electronics, sort of jewelry and watches, media company. When I left, they were a home and garden company. And that was all driven based on keyword research. That was all driven by SEO. We realized big box retailers weren't moving on this. The Bed Bath and Beyonds, the Macy's, they weren't, if they even had websites, they weren't into it. And so we just swooped in. we had all the same suppliers. We figured out the supply chain in China. We'd go figure out who's making these tables from Pottery Barn, and we'll get the same ones and charge, way less. And it was really a kind of a brilliant moment where supply and demand, like, both were ticking at the same time. On the demand side, me doing my thing with SEO and marketing, and then on the supply side, we built this partner program that could support all these new categories, and just whoosh, it just kind of took off. So a lot, as I said, we had over 20 developers working strictly on SEO, and a lot of projects associated with it. It's a rare opportunity. And so we did get to, you're probably salivating, thinking like, if you could just build, and the domain authority was already there, the brand was already there. It was like, let's just architect the perfect engine.
Yeah, no, it sounds like, I guess Bloomreach was trying to do something like that, but it sounds like you were doing a little bit before them, where they were building dynamic categories on sites, which is great. Did you ever run into maybe a category that became really thin and had issues on that automated scale like that? I could see, say white end tables might have like, maybe there was like something in the news or an influencer had like a white table and everyone looked for it. And then the next week it was nothing. Now you have a page that no one's searching for. Was there like a cleanup process in that?
Yeah, there was a really strong, so the analytics part of Overstock was extremely big, and there was a feedback loop. So we actually had a metric that would look at, people hitting a category page, how likely were they to click onto a product page? Meaning they saw something in the category that looked nice enough that they'd go through. Good categories would be 100%. Anything under like 60, and it went straight to the buyers, and they went to their suppliers and they said, hey, and they loved it because it's an opportunity, right? They can go out to their whoever it is and be like, you want to sell a bunch of whatever it is on Overstock? Yeah. There's plenty of demand. And it's amazing how quickly it would get filled. But yeah, that was a cool thing when I managed both of it, because I was managing the SEO and the marketing side, but this analytics team that sat in the middle was providing, and I was managing the buying team too. It was feeding information back that actually did it really well. And yes, I know Bloomreach, I know Raj quite well. I won't say who came up with the idea, but ours was a bit different. Theirs was like using search, right? So they would like actually just put the keyword. But yeah, we tried it too. It's a cool idea.
No, I've seen it,
business model.
And I've seen it work well, and I've seen it not work well. So it all depends on that. I was part of a client where they took it off, and their rankings tanked and they were freaking out, but their traffic never moved. And so it was one of those where we're like, maybe you're ranking for way too many things you didn't need to rank for. But
so the key for us was making it part of the navigation. So not just putting as this like little other searches box, is that it naturally flowed into the navigation. So Google really trusted it. Yeah.
That's awesome. What are like some of the, I think we've all had those moments where we tried something and it might have worked the opposite way we thought it would have worked. What were some of those that in like running a large site, like were there any like major moments where you're like, crap, we just totally blocked like a million customers coming to the site? Or maybe it's not that extreme. I'm lucky to say that I never had a super extreme moment like that, but I have been part of recoveries where people have brought us in because they have like totally destroyed like the middle part of an e-commerce site, right? Where it's like you have the homepage, then it's categories, and then like once you get to the detail pages, like if you can't flow to that, there would be an issue. And I've had so many companies just like block that. There's too many category pages, so we just block them. And it's like, why? Have you like run into that, like at Overstock? Maybe somebody on your team pushed something out that could have, whether you caught it right off the bat or really did some damage.
Well, this is when it gets fun. How about being banned from Google for 6 months?
Oh,
that's a pretty big one.
Tell us more.
Yes,
that's my black hat badge of honor. Yeah, we were made an example of. I mean, I have a bunch of these stories actually, if you want me to tell some funny ones. But yeah, we got banned from Google for 6 months for buying links. You might remember how Conductor operated in the early days. They would buy. It was actually brilliant. Seth made a bunch of. It was brilliant. They would buy, homepage space on the New York Times, and they wouldn't want any sort of tracking links or anything. They just put nice, clean links and display ads all throughout these very high, publisher sites, and you could have like a betting, or sheet set link from the New York Times homepage for 6 months. It was crazy. So that was a major one.
I work for the New York Times and I can't even get that right now. So it's
yeah, right. That was sort of nuts. So getting banned from Google, we were made an example of. It took us 6 months of just full on scrambling and working with them directly. So that was probably the biggest one. Another one, we on Black Friday once pushed a bunch of code that we were doing Pirates of the Caribbean DVDs for like $10 when it was just coming out and everybody else was at 20. It was a new customer acquisition strategy and it took the whole site down for all of Black Friday. We lost like $15-20 million. Another one, I had a really low level employee just accidentally type in a coupon that was 10 off of 10 versus 10 off of 100. We racked up like $7 million of sales in like 4 hours. That was a free. So yeah, there was a bunch of those. On the SEO front, obviously getting banned would be the biggest one. Other things that happened though, we were really onto like the technical SEO from an early stage. We were doing structured data really early. We were doing page speed really early. So when we pushed stuff, usually it would work. I can't remember a specific moment of us. I think we were good enough to I don't think we ever like pushed something that really hurt us bad. Other than, just the accumulation of sort of sketchy links over time that ended up banning Overstock from Google. But there's a couple war stories for you.
What do you think in terms of advice for, if you're somebody working on e-commerce or enterprise, or in the case of, what you did, which is literally massive scale enterprise, what do you think it is translatable to 2021, the 2021 version of that sort of SEO?
The first advice I always give an e-commerce company is the importance of your navigation, and that is where everything really starts. So having your navigation reflect demand and not what you call things, but what people actually search for. People don't search for sheet sets, they search for sheets. Almost every e-commerce company is at fault when it comes to this. And it's probably the quickest win to be successful. I've seen e-commerce companies change their navigation and grow 100% in 3 months. You're just gotta call things what people actually call them and what Google knows them as. So that's the quickest. After that, I see a real lack of focus around sort of category and refinement pages. Your category and refinement pages are your bread and butter. Those are the pages that are gonna make you a lot of money if you start ranking. They're more broad terms. And you'll just see like companies will have a list of products and there'll be nothing else. There's no content. So we had a system that would like basically pull 10% of the review volume of any given category and populate it at the bottom of the page or intermittently on the page. You need to have a content strategy. If you want to rank for sheets, you can't just have a bunch of sheets. You got to talk about those sheets and you got to have reviews. So those would be the two quickest. Obviously, in 2021, the big mover and shaker is going to be the page experience update and core web vitals and page speed. E-commerce sites are just the nature of them and how they have to pull in pricing dynamically and they have to pull in reviews dynamically. They're just slow sites. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. I mean, even Amazon can be slow, even eBay, Overstock, we've worked on it a lot. I don't know how it's doing now, but those would be my top three. I think the first for any e-commerce is get that navigation dialed and then think about what's the content strategy for a lot of those top ranking pages or those really important pages.
So a lot of these companies, and this has been my experience, as they've evolved, the team sizes have grown. There are a lot of different stakeholders that have control over the navigation. A great example, a discussion we recently had with a client was around what to call things or how to merchandise a category that and should they merchandise a category that doesn't necessarily have a huge amount of inventory but has some inventory. And as organizations like that get bigger and there's more visibility into the site, there's more red tape that's why it takes so much longer, to get things implemented. So how do you, maybe that's the reason that you built your product. But had you not built your product, how do you get around some of that stuff?
Usually the biggest blocker to SEO success in companies is this sort of political back and forth, whether it's with IT or it's in e-commerce, it's with merchandising or with buying, or it's brutal, right? There's always, and it is a reason, I actually can't say that it's the reason that I founded Huckabuy, but there's a reason that Patrick put me in charge of buying at Overstock at a certain point. Was we were just done having those conversations with the other sides. There's a reason, we had developers working directly in the SEO department at Overstock. It's really tough. It's really tough. Those political conversations are difficult, what you want to call stuff. And, I think I was lucky to have a boss that cleared up a lot of it for me, but you have to build, I think good SEO companies that do SEO really well, it becomes part of their culture. Like it is part of the culture, just like, being good at doing returns. Everybody's on board. And the real flip of the switch at Overstock was when the revenue started flowing in. I remember I had the buyer of bedding hire a copywriter to write copy out of their own budget. And that was like a big step forward. But yeah, that's tough. I don't know if I'm answering your question, Jacob, but yeah, those conversations are, and you do have to be, I don't think being a bulldog is the right way. You have to show the opportunity, and like, do you feel better about naming this category something special for your own personal ego, or you care more about it selling a bunch of, tie-dyed shirts? Like, which one do you want? You got to pick. But those conversations can be tough because then they take it personally. So, navigating that is not easy. I think one of the reasons where Huckabuy really helps at this point is like, you're never going to get this done. And so have an outsourced solution. And it still gets tricky because we do integrate at the CDN, it's DNS changes. We have to talk to IT. But if they both sides realize the value we're providing, they're like, this is actually a lot less work than us spending 18 months doing a dynamic rendered version and page speed and all these tough problems.
Yeah, one thing that I think e-commerce sites have a problem with in general is content, at least unique content, right? Because a lot of times, like if you're Overstock, you're getting 1 million products in. A lot of times you just go with what the manufacturer just sends out. I'm not saying Overstock in general, but that is a common problem with e-commerce sites, and differentiating yourself from someone like Amazon, who does have, like, on any product 73,000 reviews somehow. Like one of my favorites is the banana slicer. I don't know if you just look up like banana slicer, and there's like 1 million reviews, and they're all hilarious because it's like a 99-cent thing that cuts bananas, and who needs it? Like a banana, you don't need to cut them. So that's kind of the joke of that whole site. But they've created like a cult of reviewers on their site there to have that kind of unique content. Being someone who has competed against Overstock and Amazon in the past, one thing I noticed Overstock did a lot of was like how-to content to be like that unique content. So if we talk about like couches, there was like how to clean a couch, how to remove dog hair from your couch, how to do that. There was a whole bunch of that type of content. Do you see that still working on sites? Like, just in general, I guess unique content always is going to work to an extent, but like what kind, I guess, of contents are you seeing working in the e-commerce space these days?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one with the Overstock example because we had such massive resources. We had on top of the 40 employees, we had another 30, 40 copywriters that were just writing around the clock for our stuff. So this is putting me a little bit in a mental pretzel thinking about it. Like, how would I go about it with a normal e-commerce company? I think the takeaway is, yes, content definitely still matters. I think I was reviewing some of the potential questions on this podcast. And I think one was like, how do you compete with an Overstock or Amazon? And what I've found with our customers that are smaller is you do have to get quite clever when it comes to keyword research. You have to find a path towards success that you feel like you are the authority on. So like, I'll take a smaller company here in Utah. Their name is Cool, Kuhl, awesome brand. They make outdoor clothing, kind of a Patagonia competitor. And their niche has been hiking pants. So hiking pants is like, they are the authority on hiking pants, and they've just gotten really good at it, and they've done their content strategy around it. And I'm not the expertise on hiking pants, they are. And so think about, what are you the best authority on? What can you talk to about better than other e-commerce companies, and then own that space and have it, take a look and make sure that you have, take a look at the keywords and make sure there's like a path to success there. SEO is, it's not just magically going to happen. You have to put in the work. You have to find the path towards success. So I think that's, what's your company passionate about, and what can you be the authority on that others can't?
Yeah, absolutely. So really quickly, let's do some closing thoughts on e-commerce, and then we've got a couple of Twitter questions. We want to award some merch. So I'll kind of start. One, if you can avoid getting your content, if you can get it in at all, shoved to the bottom of the category page, sometimes that's a tough one. I would say do it. That may require working closely with, with the design team, improving it out from a data standpoint. You can get structured data in. If you can really work to help define the category and subcategory and refinement architecture, like those are big win opportunities. The more SKUs you have, the more the economy, and the more SKUs and the more you can focus on the templates and not the pages. And what I mean by that is product page template, category page templates, a subcategory page template. If you can hone in on which templates represent the majority of your pages and focus on, instead of trying to control 50,000 pages, make 4 or 5 templates that really perform well and meet SEO best practices, the economies of scale, especially as you have more categories and SKUs, and as your site gets bigger and gets into the massive scale level, that's when those small tweaks start to lead to big outcomes. And I would say, statistically speaking, getting a 3% increase or a 5% increase on a small site, that's nothing. But when you're dealing with economies of scale, like on an Amazon, let's say you get a 3 to 5% increase in organic traffic on Amazon, that's billions and billions of visitors. So like, just always be thinking in terms of economies of scale. Geoff and Geoff, any closing thoughts on e-commerce?
I'll go next.
I would agree with you. Sorry, go ahead, Geoff.
Yeah, no problem. I'll go next, and then I'll let Geoff finish it there. I agree, coming from the technical side of things. Like I just think looking through your crawl efficiencies, it's maybe not necessarily crawl budget, but we want to make sure that Google is getting through the site or getting to where we want them to get, because I've had plenty of situations where we weren't getting deep enough into the site. So we might be getting to the category pages, but once we get into that faceted navigation type of stuff, Google would just get lost, and all of a sudden 14 million new pages were created just because of the way things are clicking. So really just look into that aspect of when you're on, especially the larger, the economies of scale. If you're at Amazon's level and you just have this weird loop that goes through, next thing you know, there's like a billion pages that Google's getting stuck at. So always looking, if you can look at your logs, great, but always like dig through Search Console data. And when you see like tons of pages showing up and like not being able to be indexed, there might be a reason there. So just digging through that way.
Yeah, I would add that when you're smaller e-commerce, you do have to find these niches where you are passionate about your product, you're the authority. Name things with their, I'll go back to the navigation thing again. No matter what size you are, that's super important to name things what people actually search for. Leverage search, keyword research to actually think about where you want your e-commerce company to go. This is the Overstock going from electronics into home and garden. You can find product opportunities there. And then once you get a bit bigger, couldn't agree with Jacob more. Then it becomes about how do you scale and do things both from a technical and a content and a user-generated content and page speed, all those types of things that will scale across multiple. That's what's so great about e-commerce, is when you figure out the engine and how the engine works, you can all of a sudden scale things across, thousands, millions of pages, and that's when success really comes.
And I will give one last closing thought. Faceted navigation in e-commerce, massive duplicate content problems if you don't do it right. It's basically like the bane of my existence when I work on e-commerce sites. The bane of my existence. You wouldn't think you'd have to do so much work with no indexing and robots files, and like you would think that those would be like last resort things. But when you're dealing with faceted navigation, those become very real first resort things, because whatever system you're working on, for whatever reason, will create like 10 different versions of a page.
Endeca.
All right. So let's move into Twitter questions. So we've got a couple of Twitter questions this week. Just a reminder, the winner will be awarded your choice of a lasered Page 2 podcast coaster or a t-shirt, whichever you choose. Geoff, not Luella, will be picking the winner. And I was really proud of myself. I was able to introduce a question that tripped up both of the Geoffs. Yep, there's the, if you're watching on YouTube, there is the coaster. Geoff, hold it up again.
I also have them in slate. So I can now do slate coasters.
Ooh,
I didn't make one
like
yet,
that.
but
Yeah, I want some slate coasters. All right, so first question comes from old reliable Kyle Rose at RoseKW. How does your page speed software work? Does the software present areas of need, or does it actually go in and solve the problems?
It does solve the problems. There's always problems that we can't touch that you might have, but it does solve a lot of the problems. I think the overarching way that it works is think about, you have your tech stack today, it's firing all these different things. Maybe there's a chat box coming from this location, maybe there's something coming from the other. And we basically optimize all the way down, cache, and push at edge. So that's sort of like the overarching how it works, is we're rendering all of that information, we're caching it, and we're putting it at edge around the world, meaning that wherever you are, whether you're a bot or a user or whoever, if you're coming in from London, there's a server right nearby that's got all the information that they need to be able to load that particular page. So that's how it works. Good question.
Excellent. So question number 2 comes from Ellie Hutton, and that is at Ellie_Hutton, Hutton on Twitter. What are your thoughts on differentiating high-value e-commerce pages that are relatively commodified, parentheses, an area rugs or dining tables page on an e-commerce site in order to earn or drive links or increase rankings?
It comes down to the product. So the product itself, those area rugs, those dining tables, that's what's going to drive links. There's no piece of content in particular. The content piece will reside on some other page that's usually a supportive page. So it's the quality of the product itself and having a unique product or having a unique category that is tried and true. The biggest reason we would get links at Overstock to some of these very same area rugs and dining tables was that the product was the best in the business and the best prices, and people would link to it.
So let me ask a quick follow-up question. Let's say you're a seller, right? And you're selling on Amazon, you're selling on Overstock, and some of these other kind of big aggregator, one-stop shop sorts of e-commerce sites, and it's the same product across all of these different sites. And you have the same product on Overstock that Amazon theoretically has. How do you differentiate in order to supplant them in rankings?
This is when I'm glad I don't work in e-commerce anymore, to be honest. I know
the answer is you don't
wrap it up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the way you do it is you do have to have unique content and unique copywriting, unique product description. Maybe you can be, a great way is better imagery. So people are always looking for better images, especially for home products. So that's really how it works. But I can't be more thankful that I'm now in software. It's tough, e-commerce is very competitive, and you will sharpen your SEO skills for sure. You'll get as good as it gets if you're in that space competing. But yeah, the short answer is you do have to probably do something like around images or video. The bots might recognize the unique writing, but the user won't. So that's usually the path to beating someone else.
Or you can just accept that second place is not a bad place to be because Amazon's the behemoth in the room, and you can just let people pay Mr. Bezos' money so he can go retire, and hopefully now that he's not going to be the running that company anymore, maybe the person that comes in will be less motivated to take over the world because Amazon literally does everything.
There's a great Warren Buffett line that is, commodity businesses are the worst unless you're the low cost provider. So if you have the lowest price, I'll be honest, when it comes to differentiating, the only thing that really matters for these commodity businesses is your price. So you'll get a ton of links if you have the lowest price.
Yeah.
All right, I'm not going to trip you guys up anymore. Mr. Luella, take us home.
Sweet. So we like to ask this question of all our guests as one final question, and that is, what words of advice would you give a person just getting into SEO?
I would say that SEO is a very logical industry and craft that if you think it through properly and you just learn how it works and then you attack those tenets, that you'll be successful. The other thing that I always say is, like, don't get discouraged by competition. There's competition now in the SEO world in every single category. We're competing on SEO terms with other SEO companies and being successful on it. I competed against Amazon for 7 years. There's always going to be competition. You just have to chip away, and eventually you'll get to a point where you are the competition. Amazon competes against eBay, one won, one didn't. That's how they got to where they are. So you can build a brand, you can build a company, you can build a career on SEO. And then the last thing would be, just don't be a jerk. There's a lot of snake oil salesmen in our business, unfortunately, and be an upstanding citizen and help this industry just be a good faith industry.
Yeah.
Don't be a jerk. That's advice.
You hear that, Bright Edge?
Yeah. Yeah, we drag Bright Edge sometimes. Yeah. Interesting.
I want to do a promo that's like, change all your Bright Edge spend to Huckabuy and check out the results in 3 months.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Bright Edge is, I feel like trying to automate me out of a job, which may someday happen. I don't think it'll be Bright Edge. It'll probably be Amazon. They'll start doing SEO. So Geoff, where can people find you?
Yeah, best way is on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on Twitter. And then Huckabuy.com, we give a 20% off discount to podcast listeners, which is awesome. This has been a pleasure. What an awesome podcast to be part of. Real experts. So appreciate you guys, and we'll make sure that we take care of your listeners if they want to try our product.
Awesome. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yes. You hear that, listeners. Go take a look at it's Huckabuy.com and go sign up for a demo. And I'm sure you'll like what you see. But anyways, thanks for another great episode. We are continuing the season. Next week will be episode 67. And I believe if I'm looking at my lineup card correctly, I think that episode 67 is Mr. Daniel K. Chung, who runs another SEO podcast. So that'll be an interesting dynamic. But if you're listening to this, already, we record on Fridays. We turn around our editing, and the episode is usually posted at the beginning of the week. So have a great week. And we'll be recording another great episode as we continue season 3. Thank you so much for listening. So just a quick little bonus feature for all of you Page 2 podcast listeners out there, and kind of a funny and a little bit embarrassing moment for us, as one of our features has been the Twitter questions, and we award merch. And Geoff and I realized that as soon as we jumped off the call in the interview last week, we're like, wait, did we actually award anything? Did we pick a winner? And the answer was no. So in this case, we're not just going to pick one winner. We're going to select 2. So Kyle Rose and Ellie Hutton. You guys both win your choice of either a T-shirt or the the coasters. So yes, so we will reach out to you. Congratulations, you're the winners. Thank you for submitting great questions again. And for all of our listeners, we appreciate you. And thank you so much for bearing with us as you kind of ride along the amateurish podcast train as we, forget things live and then remember them only afterwards. So have a great day. Have a great week.